Good point. Thank you. Okay, the March 21, 2023 meeting of Cherry Hills Village City Council will now come to order at 6:31 p.m. Roll call of the members.
Councillor Eber?
Here.
Councillor Holen?
Here.
Councillor Wu?
Happy to be here.
Councillor Sheldon is absent. Councillor Blum?
Here.
Councillor McGuire?
Here.
Okay, I'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, audience participation. Okay, we have no sign-ups and no audience, so I don't think we'll have any. Do we have any? I should ask, do we have any comments? No, okay. Reports from members of city boards and commissions. Are there any members of city boards and commissions that would like to report? Nope. Okay. Next, we have the consent agenda.
Mayor, I would have consent agenda item 6A removed.
And I'd like to remove item 6D.
Okay, any other? Good. Okay, so items 6A and 6D have been removed. Do I have a motion to approve the remaining items on the consent agenda?
Move approval of consent agenda items 6B and 6C.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes unanimously.
With respect to consent 6A, I was absent the last meeting, so I would allow it to be voted with my absence. I cannot vote on that.
Okay, any other discussion? Move to approve the minutes, or, go ahead.
I just have a couple of typos. I don't know if they should just be brought to your attention, or do you want me to actually raise them on the record? Top of page 2 in the first line involved a website. I think the word is supposed to be "and" instead of "a." On page 4 of 9, in the paragraph that begins, Mayor Brown indicated if turning left into Happy Canyon from Hampton, I think it's supposed to be was instead of were. And page 7 of 9 towards the bottom, second to the last paragraph where it says Director Workman reported he would initiate contact with the HOA representative soon regarding the proposed state zoning legislation. I think it's anticipated would be the proper word, and it would be the same to replace the word proposed in the next paragraph as well, because at the time of our meeting, we didn't have any proposed legislation. And those are my suggested revisions to the minutes.
Any other discussion? Do we have a motion to approve item 6A? As amended?
Motion to approve as amended?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and Al is abstaining. Okay, next we have item 6D, interim city manager employment agreement. Discussion?
And I just felt like, that's significant enough and unique enough that I didn't feel like it should just go through on the consent agenda. The Human Resources Manager, Catherine Ducharme, is here to answer questions if anybody has any. The memorandum was pretty self-explanatory, but I did want there to be an opportunity to have any questions if they popped up. My comment, though, is that, and I think I speak for everybody, but certainly speaking for myself, I'm really, really pleased that we're able, as a council, to offer our current excellent city manager with a leave of absence to take advantage of a special family situation, and to do so by hiring as our previous city manager, the good fortune to hire our previous city manager to be interim, who did an excellent job previously. So we're going to be in a situation where we're able to accommodate an excellent city manager without missing a beat during that period of time. And I think we're very, very fortunate to be in that situation. But if anybody has any questions or comments or other issues, certainly go right ahead.
I'd certainly echo your comments about the good fortune that Jim was available. And I think I would add that the negotiation of the terms of the agreement, very reasonable. I mean, I think he's been reasonable with us, and we've been fair with him, and so that feels good. Other comments?
Having known Jim for 4 years or whatever it was, I think it's an excellent situation for the city. And as Councilman Earl has said, that we will not lose a beat while that goes on. Thanks.
Absolutely. Is there a motion?
I move approval of consent agenda item 6D.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, new business. Now we turn to Ms. Black.
Good evening, everyone. So since we have new members on council since we last discussed this project, I will first provide some background that's relevant to both agenda items 9A and 9B. This will provide some context and history for the project, and then I'll move into the specifics of each agenda item separately. So last summer, the Art Commission selected artist Joe Norman to design custom art to be placed in John Mead Park. Mr. Norman created a proposal for a series of 3 sculptures. Most of you are familiar with, the pieces appear to be local wildlife when viewed from one direction, and children playing when viewed from another angle. So last year, the Parks, Trails, and Recreation Commission and City Council both provided approval in concept for the Resilient Sculpture Series, subject to fundraising and contract approval. The Art Commission began publicizing the sculptures in the Village Crier last fall, and on the city's website and through social media. So they also launched a fundraising campaign to raise money for the sculpture series. The community has been very engaged and enthusiastic about the sculptures. The response we've received is overwhelmingly positive. So at this time, we're very excited to move forward with both a major donation and then the sculpture contract tonight. So moving into the first agenda item, item 9A, is Resolution 11, Series 2023, accepting a donation for the Great Horned Owl sculpture.
I have just one change that I wondered if we should make in these resolutions for accepting an anonymous donation. I don't know if it's allowed, but I mean, it would seem to me that when we say the city council hereby accepts a cash donation or whatever it might be, that we sit back and say, with gratitude, the city council, or the city council with gratitude accepts a cash donation. Seems like that ought to be always in our resolutions when we're accepting donations from whoever it might be.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Along those lines, we ready for questions? Yep. Okay.
I had more to
Okay.
present, but I'm certainly happy to take questions now if you're ready.
I recognize and respect that it's an anonymous donation. Do we thank the anonymous individual or individuals, in some formal way, or is it, how do we express our gratitude back? While
Something
preserving-
that City Council can do is, I am in contact with the donors' representatives, so if council would like to put together, I could put together a formal letter on behalf of council, and council members could sign it, and we could certainly deliver that to the donor through their representatives.
That's a good idea.
Is that okay?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
We can just do that. You don't need to take a vote on that. We
Okay.
can just do that.
No, I'm
Yeah.
just wanting to make sure
Yep.
we have some concurrence and, okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, so we did receive this offer of $40,000 last year. And it is specific to the Great Horned Owl sculpture because this was the donor's favorite of the three. So over the past few months, we've been working with the donors' representatives to secure the donation. And since they want to remain anonymous, they did deliver the donation through the Denver Foundation. So we received that check in early March. The donation is specifically to be used to pay for the procurement and purchase of the Great Horned Owl sculpture by Joe Norman, but there are no other requirements or stipulations associated with the donation. Yes, and on behalf of the Art Commission, I also would like to thank this donor. The magnitude of this gift is really very impressive and will make a big difference for providing public art in our community.
I noticed when I looked at the budget, there was an amount for plaques identifying the sculptures and all. Will there be something that kind of lists major donors or?
Yes.
Okay.
And that will be a separate plaque that will likely be indoors, like the one in City Hall for the Charlot, or the Charlot piece that's in front of the police station.
Okay, thank you. Questions?
Sorry, Emily, I didn't mean to blow past you with that comment. I
Totally
thought you
fine.
were already rolling, but
No problem.
I guess I have a question that, well, first I'd like to comment that I greatly appreciate the donation. It's a substantial amount of money and a great help to this project. I am concerned, however, I'd like a legal opinion that this information of the donor is shielded by Cora, because it seems to me like the exchange of information that we've had is a document or a record that is discoverable or must be provided under a Cora request. And so I want to know what provision we're doing to keep this anonymous.
Well, I haven't analyzed that. Usually I respond to those when those requests are lodged, and this question has never come up to my knowledge before. But I'll be happy to address it when and if it becomes necessary.
But if I understand it correctly, and I'm not.
I don't
I'm
know.
not-
I don't know the facts here.
I'm not
so you-
superseding anything Kathy may or may not say. I'm looking at Emily more based on the facts. If I understand the facts of the case, though, accurately, the donation was made through the Denver Foundation. So we absolutely would provide any open records request that would show the Denver Foundation providing the $40,000 in payment.
But we also, I mean, I want to be respectful of the donor and their request to be anonymous. And I want to make sure that we are on board with this ability to do that. And while the donation came from the Denver Foundation, I believe we have records that we have, whether, even if it's a log of a phone call, that is with an owner's representative that somebody could make use of to, if they really wanted to find out who this donor is, they could probably use our records as an effort to do that. Hopefully, nobody cares and nobody wants to. But I want this donor to understand how appreciative we are and the steps that we are taking to preserve the anonymity, but with also an understanding that we cannot, until we receive a legal opinion, we cannot make an assurance that that anonymity will be maintained. I hope that that would not result in a withdrawal of this donation, but I do want to be upfront with the legal requirement that I don't see this covered by any of the exemptions under Cora. And so,
Counselor Eber, if I can hopefully shed a little bit of light. I know who the donor is. Multiple members of the Art Commission know who the donor is. They were less concerned with completely shielding their identity than sort of making a very public statement. So we have had anonymous donors in the past who understand what the Cora limitations are of an anonymous donation. And in those cases, folks typically go through enough care with using representatives contacting us that we don't know who is making the donation. That's not the case in this situation. I don't think the donor is concerned that someone could Cora request the information and their identity would be revealed. It was more they did not want to be very publicly thanked for this donation, if that
And I think to add
helps.
to that, nowhere in here do we guarantee anonymity, so we're not, exposed, if you will. Certainly, respectfully, we try to implement that and make sure that it happens, but. Any other questions, comments? Do you have a motion? Well, okay, let me make that. Oh, you got, okay, go ahead.
Go ahead. I guess, how do you do that? I move to approve Resolution 11, Series 2023, accepting an anonymous donation for the Great Horndial sculpture in the Resilience Series on behalf of the Cherry Hills Village Art Commission, with the amended language that we insert with gratitude in the appropriate place, either with gratitude the city council hereby accepts, or the city council hereby accepts with gratitude, whatever is appropriate, in section 1 of the draft resolution.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay. Next item, we have the contract for the resilience sculpture. And again, I believe that. Good evening, Ms. Black.
We can move right along. Yes, so the contract before you tonight is for the design, fabrication, engineering, and installation of the entire 3-sculpture series by Joe Norman. So the contract immediately commissions the creation of 2 of the sculptures at a cost of $80,000. Because the Art Commission is still fundraising and has about $10,000 left to raise, the contract is structured so that the 3rd sculpture, which will be the hummingbird, will not be started until the fundraising is complete and written direction is provided by staff to the artist. If the fundraising goals are not met, we won't proceed with purchasing that last sculpture. So the full cost of the 3-sculpture series is $120,000. The Art Commission has also included $680 in the project cost to account for plaques and a possible video about the sculptures. So that amount is outside of this contract cost. For the funding we have on hand, about $14,000 is allocated from the 2023 Art Commission budget, and then the large majority of the sculpture's cost is being covered by fundraising. The commission is holding their final fundraiser for the project next month, and that will be a silent auction for the 3 maquettes. So they expect to complete their last $9,000 worth of fundraising during that event. So once the fundraising is complete, I will notify the artist and he can proceed with the creation of that 3rd sculpture. Approximate locations for the sculptures are shown here on the map. They're the blue starbursts here. The exact locations will be determined in coordination with the artist, the Art Commission, and city staff. So each of these locations on the screen has been specifically selected so they're outside the floodway and floodplain. The contract runs through the end of this year, and the artist is planning for the sculptures to be ready for installation this fall. So I am recommending approval of the contract for the Resilience Series. I apologize for the length of this motion and appreciate whoever makes it. And I'm happy to answer any questions about the contract.
I've got a question, because if you look at the contract, I guess the contract is to be completed by December 31st, but the contingency is on the third piece. What if we don't fundraise that until November? I mean, how's that addressed in the contract is my question.
In that case, we would do a separate written extension of the contract. We will know by the end of next month. So the Art Commission's fundraiser is on August 26th. We'll know, April 26th. I'm just fast forwarding. April 26th. So we'll know pretty much immediately after that event whether we'll be able to tell him to proceed right away or whether it is going to be a longer process. I'm confident. They raised $13,000 at their last event in October. So I'm very confident that by the end of April, they'll be able to give him that notice, or I'll be able to give him that notice to proceed.
Yeah, to that end, and I figured that's what was going to happen. So it's not as big of a deal, but, you know, they always call me Mr. Contract. I mean, when you read this, I'm like going, hey, whose option is it? The artist shall do it if we exercise the option, and he shall by a certain period of time. It's really kind of vague. It's not a big deal in this contract because it's kind of an artsy thing. But at the end of the day, it's not really clear. So something just to kind of think about going forward.
Is that a legal term, artsy? It's an artsy.
Yeah, that's a legal term. The couple of other things too is, and as I understand, they're going to use their budget, their 2023 budget for this. And I can't remember, but you know, council always grants them a little bit of money, et cetera, every year. Part of it's operating, but I mean, what are they going to do then the rest of the year? I mean, they don't have any money.
So they do have funds outside of that $14,000. So
They do?
council,
Okay.
city council, I am not sure of the first year, but city council did grant the Art Commission an extra $10,000 in their budget specifically for permanent art for John Mead Park. I think it was in 2020 was the first year that happened. And then with COVID delays and everything else, that has been rolled forward a number of years. So they do have budget outside of that $14,000. They'll be using that to do their annual watercolor show later this fall, and possibly other events. They'll also be extending the sculpture on loan that we have right now outside of City Hall. So.
Okay. And then the other thing, and I know these are kind of somehow standard in there, but when it talks about, we have an irrevocable license to make, you know, two-dimensional reproductions of the art for non-commercial purposes. And I'm sure what they're thinking is we're out there, but I mean, think about High on Country. I mean, what if we have High on Cherry Hills Village Art that the city wants to put out as a fundraising thing for the city? I'd kind of deem that as commercial. I mean, it seems like we ought to have the right to be able to utilize these sculptures, which we're paying for at the end of the day, how we want, with obviously some restrictions on them for the artist. I mean, he still maintains the intellectual property rights associated with it. I'm just saying that, and I'm not saying that we need to go back and change it now, but I'm just saying in the future, I think that that's something that we ought to make sure that we protect our ability to be able to do. Maybe we might want to do something with that, like that. Have a thing and we're selling, you know, who knows how many pieces of art we might have, but, you know. So I'm just saying that that's something that I'd encourage the Art Commission to look at going forward when they're signing these kind of, or making these kind of contracts.
I'll bring that to their attention at their next meeting.
That's all I have.
I had a couple of questions. These are pretty big. It's like 6 feet tall. They're stainless steel, painted stainless steel. I
Yes.
think is what it said. Are they going to be hot? Do we have any idea?
I don't know the answer to that question. I do know, so this artist has other sculptures in the area. Some are along Highway 93 in Golden, and another is in Loveland. And he also has ones located in California, and you are able to walk up to them.
mean, I don't know if maybe
interact with them and
keeps him
touch
from
them,
getting
but
too
I
far.
don't, I
just-
can certainly find that out from him.
I just might want to
make
ask
sure.
about that, because if we've got them out in the park and kids are running around. And then I thought we might just want to, in paragraph 12 of the agreement, we talk about we can maintain, relocate, and remove the art. I would think we would want to be able to sell the art. If we decide we don't want it anymore, I would think we'd be able to sell it. I wouldn't think they'd have a problem with that, but I'd like to see it mentioned that we can specifically do that. Those are the only comments I had. Do you think that would be a problem?
I mean, I think it's inherent in ownership, but such
Well,
would be
I don't know why
true
we'd
of
have to
everything in number
specify that
12.
we would remove, why we'd have to specify we could remove or relocate.
Agreed, it's
Yeah.
inherent, those things are inherent as well.
It just worried me that if we specify those things and we didn't specify selling it.
There's no limitation on not selling it in the agreement either. So, I mean, but I guess we can approach the artist, has, you know, agreed in principle to this.
Yes.
Right, so I suppose we could confirm that, and that there's no objection, add that in.
Okay.
So if the motion wanted to, the motion right now authorizes me to negotiate, or, you know, staff to work with me to negotiate changes as may be appropriate and don't substantially
Yeah.
increase the obligation.
I don't think it has to change the motion.
Okay,
Yeah.
right.
No.
Question, Chris, Emily, what's the thought, I read, you know, it's stainless steel, it's not gonna rust, good paint, good history with that. Maintenance, though, is there some budget for maintenance? Is there maintenance anticipated? What do you see?
They are reportedly very low maintenance because it's stainless, because it's automotive paint that he uses. We do contract with a company that maintains all of our sculptures right now. Each of them, depending on the size, the average cost per year for sculptures is about $150 to $200. So it's not very, it's pretty minimal. So I would anticipate we would add it over the next few years to that budget for maintenance, but we do maintain the rest of the sculptures as well.
Okay,
And that was exactly my question and comment, was that on the back of the description and following up on paragraph 12 that Susan mentioned, is that it looks like we have the obligation to do the maintenance on it, that the artist is not going to come back periodically to do maintenance, correct?
Yes.
And then that brings up the question, is there any kind of a warranty that is provided? You know, we all anticipate and hope that it will work well, but if for some reason the finish that was factory put on it, so to speak, does not work, will we have some kind of a warranty on the product? Because I didn't see anything in the document about that. And
Well, Rob, it says care plan packet. We're paying $500. Is that, it says long-term repair. Is that, mean the artist will repair that or maintain it?
I'm sorry, I may have,
It's on the back of the preliminary budget. Under care plan packet, it's $500. Includes long-term repair, maintenance, and sculpture fabrication specifications. So it's in there and we're paying
That's-
for it. So is that, the artist will do that?
I don't believe so. So the packet is the instructions for either us to be able to maintain it or our sculpture maintenance company to be able to maintain it.
So that's a packet given to us that we would do ourselves?
Yes.
Okay.
so I guess my question boils down to, is there a warranty other than the $500 care package? And maybe art items are completely different, that nothing comes with a warranty, but I was just curious as to whether or not, A, it's typical, and B, should we have any kind of a warranty provided to us?
They're not warranted that I know of, but I don't believe that it's typical for I'm looking to Laura because she's she's worked with the Art Commission for longer, but I don't believe that most sculptures come with a warranty.
Yeah, not to my recollection for any of the sculptures that the city has purchased over the years. And like Emily mentioned, this artist does have several other pieces that have been out in the elements for a while and without any issue, so.
That is questions pop up and then it creates other questions. And the only thing that I'd be concerned about now that I think about it is that, supposedly these are original pieces of art. What if it turned out that it was a copy and he infringed a third party's intellectual property rights? What would happen under that circumstance?
I don't have the answer on this particular one, but typically, I've looked at this more in like website, but there's usually a takedown. If we received any notification, we would certainly comply with all requirements on, Copyright Act and creation. Or what those are, I haven't looked at, whether it's acknowledgement or.
Yeah, because this is kind of out there, and I realize, like I say, it just popped up when
It is.
this kind of question, but it's like typically, and I know in the software and game design biz, which I've got, there's an indemnification saying, hey, the only thing you're really indemnifying me for is if this infringes and I get a third party suit against me for infringement, you're indemnifying me for it. You, the artist, you, the creator.
Well,
We don't have anything like that.
We do have a
Give you a
warranty
warrant.
that it's solely the result of
warrants
his
that it's
work.
his art and does not infringe upon any copyright.
Oh, does it in there? Okay,
Yeah,
so it
in
is
the
in there then.
paragraph
Okay,
11.
then it's in there then, good.
And
Okay.
I think he also, there's a statement that the work is of high quality and compliance with general accepted standards of workmanship, which maybe, if the paint bubbles and falls off, I think we go back and say, you fail that standard. I think that's as close as you'd get to a. Not that I'm acting as a lawyer here.
Well,
I'm just suggesting that.
We've got too many of them.
I'm feeling a little lonely here because I think I'm the only one who's not a trained attorney. But, okay, any other questions, discussions? Do we want to make any, well, you can, Kathy, you can kind of absorb the changes we're thinking about and see what we can do to incorporate them in the final agreement.
And that's in the motion too, so. I'm going to go ahead and make a motion.
Yeah.
I move to approve the art purchase agreement with Joe Norman in the amount of $120,000. $80,000 is fully authorized immediately upon signature of the contract, and $40,000 is authorized upon written notice to the artist by the city staff once sufficient funds are raised by Cherry Hills Village Art Commission. I further move to authorize the city attorney to make such changes as may be needed to correct any non-material errors or language, or negotiate such changes the agreement as may be appropriate, and do not substantially increase the obligations of the city, and to authorize the mayor to sign such agreement when in final form.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, and that brings us to Board Commission Terms and Duties, and that's Laura Gillespie. Good evening.
Good evening. So tonight, staff is seeking direction from council on several items related to our board and commission terms. We have several terms that are ending at the end of May. And so the first thing is several of these members do desire reappointments. So we have the information here for council to review. They all have good attendance records, or in the case of BOA, no attendance records because they haven't had any meetings yet for that particular member. So the first item is just getting any feedback from council on these reappointments. We would bring back a formal resolution for reappointment at a future meeting. And I'll just pause there in case we want to take care of one item at a time, since this memo is a little complex.
Okay, so Laura, you're looking for guidance on,
On the reappointments of these three
reappointments.
members. If council has any concerns, needs any other information,
so we have three,
consistent with how we've done in the past.
right, three folks that are agreeing to be
I have no issues.
reappointed. Any conversation?
I'm
issues?
assuming the chair of each of these boards doesn't have a concern with the reappointment of these people?
Well, Dave Schmidt is a co-chair, so, but we could check with Pamela Hall on those. And then BOA hasn't met with Rebecca yet,
Okay,
so that was a little more tricky.
I have no concerns.
I'm fine.
I'm good.
No, we're good with them.
Okay, great, thank you. So next, we do have one BOA member who does not wish to be reappointed at the end of her term in May, and so that will create a vacancy on that board. I did go back to our council members who did our most recent interviews for application process, Councilor Eber and Councilor Blum, and they reviewed the remaining applicants from that process and determined that one of those applicants they would recommend for new appointment to the BOA. That applicant is interested in serving if council would like him to, and so we're seeking council's direction on if that is a procedure you want to go forward with, rather than resoliciting for new applications after we've just gone through that process.
You approached both Councilman Eber and myself. We went back and looked at the resumes and the applications, and both felt that Kevin Collins was very qualified to serve as that. Our question was whether he's interested in the BOAA, because at that point it was two other commissions. If he was happy with that, I think Councilman Eber and I would both support appointing him to that position.
That's correct.
And I guess my question would be, because again, as you just said, you interviewed him for other commission positions, and I'm sure he is actually really qualified and it would be a great volunteer. But I guess one question that I'd have, which I always would have for BOAA, is
Just say no.
does the applicant understand and agree that variances to zoning requirements are extreme remedies? And they understand that that's what that is. I think that's an important piece for being on the BOAA.
Right, we did talk with the applicant in the context of the two open seats, but there's a certain amount of need even in those positions to stand your ground and understand that you sometimes have to deliver tough news. The applicant seemed to be willing to do that type of work. The applicant comes out of the building industry. I believe he's a retired builder, or maybe not retired even.
He is a retired builder.
And so, the thought that his skill set would apply, that he understands codes, that he understands how they work, would be appropriate to have on BOAA. And also with the recognition that he does understand, that it's a tough time to look at variance procedures and understands the standard of review. At least with respect to the other ones. We didn't ask specifically about BOAA because it wasn't an issue, but I do think that we thought he had the ability to understand and the ability to stand up for the code.
Okay. Laura, to your question, process-wise, I think, is there any objection to this process versus, selecting a really qualified candidate that we've already interviewed for other roles versus going out and reposting? Any objection going ahead with this process? Okay.
I don't think we had any problem going ahead with this. We did raise the question of whether or not you would get any more applicants from a new posting. I think that Councilor Blum and I had thought, since we had just gone through this, also with the help of Laura, that we had just gone through this, that sending out a new notice could elicit no new. I mean, we try to sometimes have just sort of a data bank of people who are interested in commissions and appointments, but we we kind of went to that data bank here, and we're a little concerned that frankly, we wouldn't get anybody better in a new posting.
Yeah.
So,
Your process question, all good. Okay.
Before you move, are you going to move
Go
past
ahead.
this?
No,
Because
go.
I was just going to say, it's probably an appropriate time to say that, because part and parcel of this was the board commission, committee recruitment, appointment, removal policy. And you might recall that we had some discussions, again, generate questions by the commissions, new job descriptions, et cetera, et cetera. And at one point, I was working with Laura on this, and we determined that maybe it was on editing that policy and updating it, and maybe that wasn't the time. But now I'm raising it and saying, when you read this, and we know from time to time that all of our policies, just like our ordinances, when you get into them, you realize they could be revised, but you can't revise everything at once. But when something comes before us, and you have an opportunity to look at it, and you realize this really could use some review and revision, then that's the time to do it. And I'm suggesting that we look at this and direct the clerk to work to revise this policy and present it to us to clean it up. Because if you read this thing, there's a lot of things that, A, aren't very clear, and in some instances don't make a lot of sense to me. And then there may be some things that we may want to add, which we did a couple meetings ago. So I'd like to see us move ahead and revise this policy,
Excellent.
update it.
Okay. Okay. Anything else on, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, one more item on this memo, the duties and responsibilities. These were also exhibits to the memo, one per commission. They have some general things in common, but are specific to each commission. And I believe the idea originally came that when somebody new is appointed, they would actually sign this document before they start their term. So bringing that back around, it's been a while since it first got proposed by council, but taking this opportunity to bring it back around to try to finalize these documents. I'm looking for any input on those.
Okay. Input? Or,
the only other question I've got for you is the memo that was provided to us just in the discussion, just since it's going to be part of the record. It says Fred Wolf and Katie Agron terms will end. I knew her as Kate Murphy. Is that the same person as Katie Agron? Or is that a different person? And just a typo?
It should read Kate Murphy.
Okay.
Apologize about that.
so Laura, would it work to have any input on revisions to the document be given to you? And
That would be fine, yeah. If anyone wants to tell them to me now, email them to me later, however you'd like to do it.
okay, sometime 1 week or so?
Sure.
That work? Okay. So will any revisions that we want to make to the documents to Laura sometime over the next week? Does that work?
Yep, I think that works. And then I'll be happy to work directly with you, Laura, like we were doing on that.
For the policy revisions, yep, perfect.
Okay. Next, we have Village Crier Report Guidelines. And
So I've been working with Councilor McGuire on the Village Crier as the liaison. And as all of you know, Mayor Brown is interested in alternating her report in the Crier between herself and all of you. So we're calling it the Mayor Council Report. And Councilor Holen brought up that we should probably talk out some guidelines and what's expected in these reports. So this is our first draft attempting to do that. So we're seeking direction from council on that.
go ahead.
Yeah, I'm fine with these. I mean, one of the questions that I'd raised was, as I said, we should be explicit about whether or not it's the opinion of the writer or the opinion on behalf of council. And I could see going either way, but it's just if you were writing it on behalf of yourself, then it would say it's like my turn or my opinion, not But I'm perfectly happy with this too, which is that the articles are written on behalf of the council as it's written here, and I'm happy with that too. It's just that we're clear about what it is. The one question I did have on this though was, and again, let's keep this objective, it's got nothing to do with Katie. Council members should submit the column topic to the mayor and Crier Council. Why is that? Why would it be submitted to the mayor any more than it would be submitted to any other council member? I can see the council liaison, that's the job of the council liaison to the crier, is to, the council liaison also reviews the mayor's column to make sure that it's kind of comports with what we want to be done. So I guess I'd just question why that is.
I don't know that we had a particular reason for that. And if you prefer it just be the council liaison, we can do that.
That just seems like that's what it should be.
I guess I was thinking of it as it was originally the mayor's column and she's kind of opening it up. So, but yeah, there's no reason that we need to do it that way.
Yeah, I mean, no different than saying, the mayor might be interested in what we're writing, but presumably the liaison does it just like any other council member may be interested at that point in time. But the reliance is on the liaison, which I have every confidence that, in this case, Susan will.
I'd be careful there.
So anyway, it's just something that popped out at me, so. Otherwise, I didn't have any issues with this. And I guess with regard to subject matter, that is the thing is, we're all going to write one. Some of us may have, Randy did 2A, which he was going to do, and then EVs, but if you don't have a burning issue, do we have a list of topics of things that we might want the council members to kind of write on, and that would be helpful?
Yeah, we can help you come up with topics for sure.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I think you should assign topics, make it easy for us.
I had a practical question. When we say that the column should represent the view of the entire council and not the opinions of the writer, how do we know that it's the view of the entire council? How would we be sure that we fulfilled that?
That's a good question.
Justice Susan.
That's my opinion. Obviously, there could be an issue where we aren't all of the same opinion. And I think what we were thinking here is this is officially a city news sheet, and so it really shouldn't be used by anybody as their personal
forum. Yeah.
forum. And so I guess if there is a topic that is controversial before the council, I guess we'd have to talk about how we'd handle that. And
I might just offer, I know that when we've had issues that have come up that somebody's wanted to write about that have been controversial, there's been opportunities to try and guide that to more of a factual, presenting facts as opposed to advocating for a particular position. Now, sometimes, the understanding of what the facts are can also be interpreted differently, believe it or not. So I really do think that's truly the opportunity of the liaison. Once we get to that level of back and forth about what the author
pros and
should include.
cons.
Yeah, there's ways that I think
Sure.
that we can guide that topic to make it more council neutral, especially if council hasn't taken a position. We've done some of that work already in in the past.
Okay, and it's not that I'm, opposed to the orientation so much as having gone through writing one of these, how would I know?
Right.
Well, I'd just say you did a good job on yours, because I thought it was very factual and very even in terms of whatever it was, you did it.
Okay, all right, well, thank you, Earl. Okay, any other thoughts on any other thoughts on Crier guidelines?
So we'll go ahead and take out the reference to the mayor then.
Yeah, I think I think that's okay. I mean,
Yeah.
you could choose to run it past Katie if you felt it was a topic that,
Yeah.
was important for her to be aware of. But in a sense, yeah, you're our point person, I think is where I'm at, where Earl's at. Anybody feel differently?
Yeah, well, I think where it came from is that at the end of the day, and as you pointed out, the mayor's always had a column in there for years. But based on our current situation, the reason the mayor has that in there is because council allows it. Council could, that's been discussed before, council could take that back from the mayor anytime it wanted to do so. So that's kind of where it's coming from is that it's, it's a body, it's a message from council, but it's, in this case, council has decided they want the mayor to be able to put that out. The mayor's now come back and said, hey, why don't we share that around? It's a good idea at the end of the day. That's the whole point is then not to start to connote something that really isn't the case. Because I actually heard a previous mayor one time said, it's my column. And I'm like going, no, it ain't. So that's where I was coming from.
Okay. Good discussion. Moving into reports. Looks like I'm up first. Anything else? No. Okay. I should make you aware, and I'm doing this a little bit more. I hope I'm not stepping on any toes, but the BOAA has actually not met in over 2 years. I think 2.5. Is that right? So because we had a chairman that left, we have a vice chairman that left. I chatted with Chris. I chatted with Paul as well, and it seems like it might not be. It's your call, but it seems like it might not be a bad idea to have a training session, kind of get the group together, organization, all of that as well. And I think that was well received. I also had a fairly thick binder, which was a training binder that I found pretty useful, and so I handed that on to Paul for him to update, because it's about 5-6 years old, something like that. Okay. The only feedback I've received so far on the article in the Crier was kind of more connected with the EV part of it, and it really moved into the area of noise. That, is there anything we can do about noise? It's a data point of one, but at the same time, I mention it only to make you aware that at least one resident is concerned about dueling leaf blowers and stuff like that in his neighborhood. Dr. Cog, first of all, we had Steve Conklin, who is a council person in Edgewater, it was his first meeting as chair, and he opened it up by being fairly clear and succinct about his the importance in his mind of local control and in connection with pending legislation. So I think that's a good sign in terms of his leadership for that organization in terms of support for where we are. Lobbyists didn't have a lot because the meeting was middle of last week. Didn't have a lot. Things were still foggy and so on, although I'm sure they're clearing up, so we'll hear a little more about that from Chris. And the budget is looming large, and that'll take up a lot of legislator time. The other hot topics, RTD made a presentation on a revised rate structure. They've been working hard to reduce rates and simplify rates. We're among the higher fees per ride, and it's a very complicated system. So there was a presentation on how they're looking to simplify that. They've had a great deal of community input as well as their own financial considerations to keep in mind. The proposal looks like it'll go through a little more vetting and then implement sometime. Their target is first quarter of 2024. And in the main, it's a significant reduction in rates, and, there's not all the ifs, ands, buts about that. And that was the most relevant items there. So, and yeah, that's all I have. Start with you, Rob?
First, I wanted to remind everybody and mention again with a practical example the importance of safety in our village and taking steps to make sure that our possessions and property are kept safe, i.e. locking cars, doors, taking things out of cars. Sunday morning, I had an interesting experience that I was out walking and I found and reported to the police an abandoned, stolen vehicle in our neighborhood. So on Cherry Lane, just east of Albion, there's a park that is on both sides of the road. This is basically right at the intersection of where the two parks are. On the north side of Cherry Lane, there was a pickup truck that literally was on blocks with no wheels on it, that between the time I had gone out with to walk our dogs Saturday night at 8 o'clock and Sunday morning at 8 o'clock, this car was deposited there, stripped of its tires. They brought their own blocks, put it right up on blocks, and abandoned the vehicle, left a gas can in the back of the pickup truck bed. But the point is that I called the officers. They came on over and did a great job of figuring out that it was a car stolen out of the parking lot at the Walmart on Hampton, just east of Santa Fe, and sometime on Friday, and driven around for basically a day and a half, and then abandoned. So while we all think that our neighborhoods are perfectly safe and sound, yet another data point saying that we need to be a little bit careful. And when the police tell us to take good steps to take care of our possessions, that in fact, there is a reason that they tell us. So keep your eyes open and report what you see. Secondly, I think tonight our discussion a little bit on the gift brought up a question or a comment that I don't know the method to request this. I'll look over to Chris and say, is this something that I asked Chris to authorize? But I would like to have a legal opinion knowing whether or not we can keep something anonymous if push came to shove. And that way, when we're talking with our people, we at least know what we can say about anonymity. And if we can say, we hope to, but can't guarantee, or whatever it is, I think it's worth a little bit of time for council to provide us that opinion. Do I ask that for members of council, or do I Mayor Pro Tem, do I ask that to all of us, or?
No, I think we can get some help with that. I think it's a question of how we present it, whether it's guaranteeing or whether it's we'll do our best efforts, and yet we can find out what the opinion is. Do you think, or not?
Well, I guess I'd say, just to throw in there saying, I'm happy to get advice and counsel as well. Yeah. And I wouldn't want it to rise to the level of getting an opinion letter.
Yeah.
But,
We can
but
get
I'm
some
happy
input.
to get
Advice.
advice.
I mean, the reality is most of the time it's not an issue that there's a risk, because the donors that we're talking about who want to remain truly anonymous go into it with that knowledge and wherewithal. And so we don't normally we're not usually confronted with that situation. And when we are, those folks who are making that donation, that sort of semi-anonymous, that's not the word you use, I'm sure, but that's the word I'm going to use. It's just they don't want all this overt attention and their name and the villager, and that's what they're trying to avoid. And that level of fear of it being exposed to a discovery process it's not really a concern for them. So it's not typically an issue that we have to wrestle with very often. With that said, I'm certain we could spend a few minutes nailing it down, sort of triangulating it, if you will.
Appreciate that. Similarly, I guess, in my whopping 2.5 months on council, we've had one issue of a variance, I think it was, for Glenmore. We've got one in the next meeting, and then I think I've seen a couple more coming down the pike. And our discussion when we looked at the last variance was a little concerning to me when I brought up the point of what is the definition of hardship. And we kind of got a belief that this was somewhat subjective to each of us with our own standard. And I got to imagine that there is case law out there on extreme hardship that would be helpful to me, if not to anybody else, to understand what is the base level or some commonalities or something that gives me a little better understanding of whether or not somebody has established the criteria for hardship. I know that in our next meeting, we go through and we've got our 9 criteria for a variance or whatever that we go through. But, I raised in the last one that we looked at the question of sort of creating your own hardship. Is there a hardship? As whether or not that's a factor of, eliminating the opportunity for you. And that came up in the context of, had they done maintenance on the golf course, would they have this hardship of the golf course potentially washing away in a storm? But the answer that I think I got back from the representative was that if they had done maintenance, they wouldn't be in this pickle. And so it sort of seems like that is a disqualifying factor in my mind from the ability to have a variance and to establish hardship. Similarly, I've got some questions that I won't go into tonight with respect to the one that we'll look at next. But the idea there is, if we can again ask council to do a little bit of homework and provide us some guidance about what there might be that makes it where we're all dealing with the same understanding of the criteria for hardship, that would be helpful to me.
Right now, it's scheduled for not attached to a specific project, which is the better way to have that conversation.
Correct.
Scheduled for May 16th.
Oh, it's already on our?
It's already on the schedule, yeah.
Oh,
The discussion for what is a hardship.
appreciate it. Thank you. Way to go, city manager. Third, I just wanted to mention a little bit of follow-up in talking. As everybody knows, I represent the northeast part of the city that is on the east side of the Hampton Corridor study that we heard about last meeting. I greatly appreciated the depth of the discussion. In talking with all of my neighbors, and I will say that it has generated an awful lot of interest. I will say it has generated a lot of concern about what it means for traffic into the village, out of the village, how it ties to a present proposal that is going on in my neighborhood about closing Parkway. I do think that there is a huge amount of interest as it impacts Cherry Creek North, all of the streets along Hudson, Oxford, anything that is sort of south in the Hampton, Dahlia, Mansfield Heights, all of those areas are tremendously interested about the issue of how they might have difficulty getting through to their homes if they have to cut through Denver. And so they were very interested in the report. If they're not showing up at your meetings, I'm going to do the best I can to take their pulse and forward it to city staff as best as I can. But they're very concerned about what it means to get in and out of the village onto Hampton.
Just out of curiosity, what rises to a higher level? Their ability to get in and out of the village or cut-through traffic?
I would say that in the recent discussions that I have had, well, let me step back and say, historically, it was cut-through traffic. And maybe that's because they have access in and out. Now, with a potential of no left turns and only right turns into Albion Parkway, Dahlia, people are very concerned about access in and out of the village. I don't, that's a non-representative, but I just wanted to bring it up more tonight.
No, and it's good.
People are heavily interested in my area about the Hampton corridor and the impact of the proposals.
Right,
So-
yeah, and you'll get that. I just haven't gone through the master plan process like I did on planning and zoning, and I've always said traffic is the big issue. And that discussion we had last week, I thought was actually really, really interesting. And I thought, so here it is. No left turns on Dahlia. Well, wait a minute, that obstructs us in terms of getting in and out of the village. Yeah, but it cuts down on cut-through traffic. And then you flip it around, it's like, well, no, now there'll be cut-through traffic. I mean, it's like everybody wants everything. Basically, what they want is the only people that can make a left-hand turn on Dahlia are Cherry Hills Village residents. And that's always the issue. And it's really, really difficult, and that's the problem that we always have with regard to these traffic issues.
And it's entirely possible that folks are opposed to cut-through traffic in concept, and when they see how that actually then gets applied, they then say, oh, well, in that case, maybe not. But with that said, I do want to clarify one item. There's been no recommendation from the committee on left turn at Dahlia, eliminating a left turn at Dahlia. What there hasn't been is a dedicated, protected left turn at Dahlia proposed. Is that correct?
That's correct, but Denver is currently working on that intersection. They
Agreed.
have
I just don't want, if Rob, if you're out there talking with folks, I don't want you to sort of portray that they're going to eliminate left turns and it's going to have a no left turn sign.
Correct.
Okay.
No,
Just making sure.
the only representations I have had are that there are alternatives discussing left turns on Hampton in general. And, I've even had one resident come to me with a comment that the real problem at the Dahlia intersection at Hampton is really not so much Dahlia, but the fact that there is a third cycle of lights that is Happy Canyon that is incorporated before east and west traffic on Hampton goes. It's got two groups of cycles because it's got the Dahlia angle and then it's got a second go round for the Happy Canyon angle, which allows all of the traffic to back up so much on Hampton as a way that this person said maybe there's a way that you could even somehow funnel via a dreaded word rotary with the idea that that Happy Canyon and Dahlia traffic are fed so there's only one point of entrance onto Hampton and therefore eliminate, and it does involve possibly a condemnation issue because there is an office building in between those two intersections. But
Yeah, five-pointed intersections, three different traffic is a universal problem with that many legs in an intersection. That's not unique to this one. The traffic engineers who are working on this are well-versed in this dilemma. And you're right, that person is correct. It adds another traffic cycle to the overall process. So I don't think we're going to add anything that the engineers don't already have in their possession as far as ways to address that they already have. I think that they're fully aware of that. Yes, that is the problem, and they know about that.
Before, on that point, it seems like Hamden Mobility Study had a website and had some community input opportunities with it. Is that still open? Do you know?
The website is still open, yes. Yes, you can go, and it's linked on our website. What's not open are any of the polls anymore, the input
You can't
You
write a
can't
note or something?
write any more notes. There will be another public input meeting coming up in May, I believe. But that's going to be the last one because we've been doing this for over a year and the study's starting to wind down.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking Rob might be able to point them, at least for information for now, and maybe they'll pick up that date for the May input meeting.
We can send, Rob, we can send you specifically the information about that meeting, the details of that meeting. If people start asking you about it and putting you on the spot, you can give them that information.
Yeah, when we know the meeting date, we will get that to you and we can send you the link also.
No, I appreciate that. And I would assume, Susan, you've got the western half of the village as it abuts Hampton. So, I don't know if you're hearing anything, but, I guess the two of us seem to kind of cover that piece of the village. So we should
Yeah,
probably.
the western half is mostly signalized.
Yeah.
There's very few, yeah.
So,
There's not as much, I mean, it's pretty much Clarkson University and then we've got a line in between.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's pretty limited number of houses that live.
Yeah.
Is the Parkway issue coming before council? What's the status of that?
let me jump in and, go ahead, I'm sorry.
It eventually will. We've been trying to work through all of this situations and with the church and with the residents. Still working with our engineer to get a few different scenarios together, but
it's not set for quasi.
no, it's not set for anything. It's
I've been getting
it's
calls
a very
on it also.
difficult situation, and again, it's just like the Hampton study. Is can we fix one thing without wrecking another? So
The residents are trying to work with the church to see if they can come up with a joint solution.
Yeah.
And that takes time.
yeah, and as a public entity, we want to stay out of the private side of it. We don't want to tell the church what they can or can't do. So the residents are working directly with them.
That's all, thank you.
No real report. I just wanted to thank again our HR manager, our city attorney, and our city clerk for all of the work they did with regard to the interim city manager process. They really did a great job, so thanks.
If I may, I forgot to mention, on that conversation we had about the Art Commission and the sculptures, I have to say, I personally am really impressed with the job that they did on raising the funds. That's a fairly substantial amount of money and very impressive. So if you guys feel the same way, maybe we should let them know that they did a great job.
They meet on this coming Monday, so I'll pass that on.
Okay.
And you can fill that gap by placing your
There you go.
your bid on those sculptures that when they have the fundraiser.
Yes, the invitations will arrive in your next packet, so please keep an eye out for those.
Great.
Thanks, Mayor Pro Tem. One thing I want to do is welcome Brennan Leininger as our new commander. I was fortunate to participate in the interview process, and obviously he was unanimous, impressed all of us, and welcome to the meeting. Now that you're here, you get to enjoy these. The question I've got is on Mead Lane. Have we entered into a listing agreement? What's the status of that?
That is with the city attorney right now.
Okay.
As soon as she reviews that, it will be on the street. We've got the input from Councilor McGuire and Sheldon, and Kathy's going to do her quick work on that.
On the RFP. Yeah, we don't
Yeah, the
even have,
RFP.
yeah, it's going to be an RFP for the process before we get to the agreement, yeah.
Okay. And for Jay, one additional thing, the speed limit sign on Bellevue sometimes does not work. So if they can check on the maintenance on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, we will check on that. And we knew it was going to have issues on cloudy days. It can only, because of the amount of traffic, it uses a lot of electricity. But I'll make sure my guys get out there and look at it.
A lot of speeders.
I don't have anything in the way of a report. I don't know if this is going to be discussed during the city manager and staff reports. I was just concerned and looking, welcome to the meeting, and looking at the police department monthly statistics year-to-date, criminal mischief, theft from motor vehicle, and burglary are up significantly. And I realize it's only, we're not that far into the year, but the numbers are up significantly over last year. And I'm just curious if we have a idea of what's behind that or what's driving that, and if we think that's something that's going to continue.
Unless the commander has specific information he'd like to provide tonight, we absolutely can have the chief put something together for you in the next report.
Okay.
Verbally in the council meeting, I mean. Unless the commander has any,
Well, and while you're
pearls of
doing that,
wisdom he would like to
because I
offer
thought
up.
maybe it was going to come up a little later, but I was just curious in the report. Usually there's a summary of crime investigations during the month, et cetera, that went on, and that's not in there. And I just thought, is this kind of the new summary? Is this kind of, there used to be a lot more information in the police report, and so I was just, okay.
Okay,
All right.
thanks.
Come
That's
back
all I
to
had.
Okay, thank you. Next we move on to city manager and staff reports.
I will start on the other side. Manager Black.
I have no report.
I have no report. I'll yield my time to City Manager Kramer. I know he's got a lot to talk about tonight.
Good evening. Although I don't have specifics on the questions that you're asking, I would absolutely 100% like to echo a comment that Councilmember Eber made and just really talk about the importance of, our residents making sure that their vehicles are locked, their houses are locked, they're taking their valuables inside, collecting their mail so that we're not leaving mail in the mailboxes. These are all things that we can do as residents to try and combat that criminal activity from occurring. That being said, I am happy to report that SafeWise last week put out a report of the top 20 safest cities within the state of Colorado, and your very own Cherry Hills Village was ranked at number 6. And that was the only Denver metro area city listed in the top 10. So I just want to, recognize the hard work and the dedication from the men and women of the police department here in keeping this city safe. That's all I have.
The interesting thing about that report was that all of the cities above us were all in Weld County. Every single one of them. In Weld County. And I kind of actually asked the chief that, and he said, "Oh, that's an interesting observation." And then there was some mumbo jumbo that I didn't really understand. But I mean, I just thought it was interesting because mine was like, are they doing anything in Weld County that they're not doing anywhere else? Because we have a lot of areas in Colorado that are lower density and what have you, and it's like all of them were there. And I just thought that was just an interesting observation.
I personally would have no better information than the chief's mumbo jumbo that you got before. So anything I would provide to you would be even more mumbo-y jumbo-y.
I didn't mean that in a, you'll hear that expression from me from time to time.
Okay,
It's something
fair
I use
enough.
regularly.
I know, I'm just kidding. I mean, obviously, it's a completely different context, right? And, I mean, it's hard. I think that's why the commander brought up that our comparison, our context is really the metro area. And so that's why highlighting where we sit within the metro area context is really, in my mind, the most relevant part. I'm sure there are very interesting criminology aspects and the demographics and the household income and the fact that there's a university there. And it's probably would be fascinating. I, however, would just be speculating, and you don't want that.
I wasn't looking, I just thought that was an interesting, because there's a lot of areas in Colorado that are as, low density as not as many people as Weld County. I do think, since we're talking about it, the one thing that is important, and that's something that we as a council have to continue to do, and I really applaud again the police department and the chief's strategic plan that they're working on. But again, it's something that we need to work on, that 90% of our break-ins and our burglaries, are crimes of opportunity in Cherry Hills. one of the things when I was meeting and talking to the chief is I said, you know, whatever our metric is, and however we're measured against that, if all of a sudden everybody in the village started locking their cars and locking their houses, it would literally plummet.
Yep.
And that, I think, is something that we have to figure out how to get this to our community. And it ain't going to be in, you know, coffee with a cop or a police night out or, you know, drug take back or whatever the hell we do, because the people that come to those are the ones that are locking their doors. It's the people that ain't coming.
And I, please don't take the fact that I asked that question to mean that I was so pleased in your Friday email that you sent out to read that statistic that you just brought up, that we ranked so high in that. And I do feel incredibly safe in this community and take a lot of pride in that, and that we are such a safe community. At the same time, when I see numbers change, I want to make sure that we're analyzing that and saying, what's driving that? Let's look at that. Because that's what you need to do to make sure that you stay safe, sure. Right? So that's why I asked the question, and not because I don't think that we're a good place to be. So just to be clear.
Just to follow up on Mayor Pro Tem, Mayor Pro Tem's statement, we are looking at doing a training with the Board of Adjustment and Appeals probably sometime later this summer. There are a whole host of updates related to state land use and state legislature, but I will yield that conversation to City Manager Kramer.
Thank you. A number of updates. Council may have some knowledge. This may not be all of these may not be new updates for all of council, but I'm going to go ahead and provide them anyway, if for no other reason than to make sure that any residents who are watching today or later on are aware of everything that's going on. First of all, we are in continuous communication with our lobbyist who reports that this issue is the top issue being discussed in the halls of Capitol Hill. And they are being very active with their efforts to advocate on our and Greenwood Village's behalf. So we are still very active on that front. We are also working with Arapahoe County, all the jurisdictions to that end. This Friday at lunch, there will be a legislative lunch for as many of the Arapahoe County delegation who can attend on Friday will be there, and I think we have some RSVPs from some of you as well. Just as a heads up, there is a PowerPoint presentation. There's going to be some high-level messages that will be made. Those messages will likely emphasize everything that Arapahoe County is already doing to help with affordable housing. It will not likely be an aggressive counterpunch to any legislation at this time. With that said, the next effort that will be taking place at a county level is going to be next Thursday night. There is going to be a telephone town hall. They are expecting and hoping for tens of thousands of people to participate in that. That's not an exaggeration. So, I think that the tone of that particular event will be a little bit more aggressive. And I think part of the reason for that is because we are expecting legislation, the main bill, to possibly be released this week. So with that event being next week, there will be time to really look at, analyze, and think about what those impacts might be to specific jurisdictions within Arapahoe County.
Chris, just for the benefit of anybody that might be viewing online, you might get the central issue of this being state and preemption and so on.
Yes, similar to the previous conversations that we've had in this forum, it is expected that the legislation that will, that's a nice segue into my next item here. Okay. So we are expecting the legislation to drop this week. And from everything that we're hearing, we are expecting for that legislation to include a fair amount of preemption, where the state is going to set what they're calling a floor or minimums on local land use and zoning regulations. And as council knows, land use and zoning have traditionally been the domain of local jurisdictions who go through their own, usually very public processes to get public input, usually based on a comprehensive or master plan that can help hopefully align the long-term vision with current policies that are occurring today. This preemption by the state would, I'm just going to say it, it's going to blow that entire process out of the water. And none of those steps would take place. As we've talked about before, obviously our city council is extremely concerned. I believe we have talked about this in terms of it being a threat to the very essence of this community. And I can tell you there are some other communities out there, a lot of other communities out there who feel the exact same way. As a heads up, however, as this conversation has been occurring and the state and the governor's office has reached out to some jurisdictions, that may not be universal. There may be some communities who support giving away their local land use authority. They would not likely like to phrase it in such a way. They would like to say that they are doing more to help promote affordable housing. But make no mistake, this bill will erode local control of a local issue. So I do want to check in with City Council tonight on that issue. If the legislation does in fact get released this week, I will just tell all of you, Paul and I, probably Kathy to a degree as well, there will be a lot, especially within this first week, there will be a tremendous amount of, probably through next Friday, a lot of understanding and initially, conference calls. What does this mean? What does that section mean? Red lines, highlighters. There will be a lot of analysis probably through next Friday. Supposedly, the sponsors of the bill they have stated to many different folks, they are going to be open to input. Meaning they have indicated that they're willing to make changes to the legislation. Whether or not you believe that is probably a personal choice. I think we have no choice but to take them at their word. If they're willing to say that, then we should take them up on it, because I have no doubt that there's going to be elements of this that we will not support, maybe the entire thing. So knowing all of that, when we have talked previously, City Council has been unanimous that your view is that any infringement upon our Article 20 in the Colorado Constitution, our home rule authority, is to be opposed, even if said infringements aren't necessarily applicable to Cherry Hills Village. Like, for example, ending growth caps, right? We don't have a growth cap. Lakewood, Golden, Boulder, Aspen, they have growth caps. But we still would want to help oppose that because it is an infringement on Article 20 and our home rule authority. I can tell you there are going to be jurisdictions out there that are going to, when the bill drops, that will oppose. Their strategy is going to target the most painful parts for them, and they are going to zero in on those parts. There's going to be other jurisdictions that are actually going to support this bill. Before this bill drops tomorrow, I want to just confirm with council that we are still unanimous, that we are opposing any limits to home rule authority on principle.
I'd say yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm in the same place. I think the region benefits by having distinct communities that have their own flavor and can manage their own affairs. And I'm also honestly skeptical. I hear the words, greenhouse gases and affordable housing and so on, and this is supposed to be the cure for that, but I can't say that I really have had a compelling argument presented that connects those dots. So we kind of have this problem and we have this solution, and I'm not exactly sure that this is going to solve that problem, but it will cause a whole bunch of other problems.
Sure.
And that's a concern. So no, I'm not in favor of it at all.
Yeah, I strongly believe in exactly what you said. We've got to defend it on both cases, and in particular in terms of the diminishment of home rule. And in fact, to that end, I mean, again, it's in the Constitution. Arguably, it's a legitimate question to say, you know what, we need to rethink home rule. You sit back and you address everything associated with home rule at that point in time. But what you don't do is you sit back and go, no, we believe in home rule, but we're just going to take this one piece out. That is not what you do. Article 20 speaks to a broad concept that has existed for a long period of time. And I think that hopefully there's going to be somebody that's going to be speaking to that more eloquently than I do. But you see it more broadly in terms of the things that happen, federally. I mean, the issue is that if you want to talk about changing some aspect, you can look at that, but you got to look at broadly and say, oh, the whole thing, the whole concept. You don't just sit there and pull out one little piece at that point in time. So, yeah, I'm against any change that diminishes home rule and local control.
I would agree completely with everything that's been said, and my only addition would be that I continue to believe that this is not a matter qualifying as a matter of statewide concern, and I think that should be an important provision of our attack on this, that geographically probably 95% of the square miles of Colorado are not in the problem of high-impact housing prices. Yes, the metro area in some areas is part of this work that has been done, but we've been hearing for a long time that the more rural parts of our state would love to see additional economic development in their area, and I don't think the extremes that are being offered here through this proposed or anticipated legislation are the way to solve the issues that supposedly are out there.
Well, and there's when the legislation does drop, even though it might change, there's going to be a number of things to look for. And I think they will be sprinkling throughout that language that sets them up for establishing this bill as qualifying for an issue of statewide concern. So we'll see how they tackle that. On that particular issue, that's a great example. We've heard reports they may only have it apply to metropolitan areas, or areas that have a metropolitan planning organization that covers it, which and also exempt out any unincorporated areas. So that's going to eliminate about 96% of the state won't have to fall under the jurisdiction of this.
And yet it's a matter of statewide concern.
Yes. Again, those are things that we'll want to tackle and sort of analyze right when it comes out. So just so you know why I'm asking and checking in again, once the legislation drops, myself, Kathy, the mayor, she and I both are on that Arapahoe County working group. There's going to be a number of meetings where this will go really quickly, and there'll be a lot of back and forth, and having us have a consistent message in all of those forums. Our lobbyist is going to attempt to have meetings with us and individual legislators. Having our council unanimous direction on this allows us to speak more authoritatively in all of those forums, Arapahoe County, with CML, with the individual legislators. It's going to help solidify where we're coming from, because I'm just giving you a heads up now. This is going to become fractured immediately, and so it's good for us to know our true north. So with that said, if it does happen, unfortunately, I will be out of the office on Monday and Tuesday. I have to go back to Oklahoma, family health issues with my family. So I will be working on the packet, and I will be working from there, but I won't be in town on Monday and Tuesday. But I'm fully expecting for this to be a big part of Paul and I's work days for the next few weeks. So that's the only reports I have tonight.
Okay, city attorney? Okay, any other business? No other business? Then we stand adjourned at 8:06. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.